Chapter 756, A Huge Disaster. So the vans are here to pick up these mutated animal specimens. How did they gather so many? They definitely won't fit. Did the bosses from the species research specialization wipe out all the mutated animals somewhere? The students started to discuss. The species research specialization, which had been acknowledged as an inferior specialization, suddenly became a valiant specialization in the Luotian Cultivation College. At first, Lu Shu had secretly collected many specimens. Just doing so earned him many distress points as well. It was like this. When they went back the same way, they passed by where the corpse of the bear had been. But, the corpse had vanished. Wang Yan and the rest panicked. How did the corpse of a bear disappear? When they passed by where the corpse of the wild yak had been, the corpse had disappeared as well. Wang Yan and the rest panicked. Was there some strange creature eating the corpses? Would it attack humans? The entire trip back was like a horror movie to Wang Yan and the rest. All the corpses had really disappeared. They grabbed onto the arms of the Heavenly Network members and would not let go. They did not know whether to laugh or to cry. Lu Shu was happy that he was able to earn distress points from them. He did not reveal that he had secretly kept the corpses in the Seal of Lands to use as specimens. Zhang Xian laughed. We are also acting according to orders. I know that the students in the species research specialization have worked hard. But to be honest, we all know Nieting's personality. He doesn't have any ill intentions. Lu Shu waved. This has nothing to do with you. But it had a lot to do with Nieting. In the past, there were times when Lu Shu would strategically retreat. This was a nice way to put it. A less pleasant way to phrase it would be that he gave in. But now, things were different. He had chaos. Nieting was a Class A, but Lu Shu had a Class A pet as well. There was nothing Lu Shu had to fear. Zhang Xian did not question him further. We brought more vehicles this time, because we weren't sure how many specimens you would bring. But it's fine. We have a way to contact you. Next time, just tell me how many vehicles you need, what? When Zhang Xian saw the sheer number of specimens, he unconsciously turned back and looked at the 6 refrigerator vehicles he had brought. Stop collecting specimens. We can't fit them all. Lu Shu happily continued to take out specimens with Chao Qingxi and Lu Xiaoyu. He laughed at Zhang Xian. Next time, just bring this amount of vans. It should be enough. To be honest, Zhang Xian did not expect them to be able to obtain so many mutated animal specimens. The cultivation colleges would only dissect 1 or 2 specimens every month. They had promised to come every Friday as they thought that Lu Shu would catch mice, scorpions or centipedes to make up the numbers. He did not think that Lu Shu would produce a bear and wolves. They had even placed bets. Hao Jichao and the rest were considered to be part of the upper middle classes of the organization. Thus, they knew how strange the Luotian Cultivation College species research specialization was. Everyone had placed bets on what specimen Lu Shu would take out first, as well as the number of specimens. But the trip to the Kunlun Mountains had been classified by Nieting as there was a large secret involved in the mountains. Thus, Hao Jichao and the rest did not know that Lu Shu had gone to the Kunlun Mountains. Lu Shu was thinking of a problem. He had wanted to go to the Chengbai Mountains and take away the sword that Nieting used to create sword formations. If he did not want to be discovered, he would have to change his appearance. Lu Shu decided that when he had the chance, he would give Nieting a big surprise. Ha ha. After they finished transporting the specimens, they were still left with more than half of the specimens to be transported next week. Zhang Xian suddenly smiled. There is going to be a competition among the cultivation colleges. Are you going to participate? Why should I? Lu Shu did not care. These kinds of competitions were very childish to Lu Shu. He had killed so many people, experienced so many fights, and even come face to face with a Class A. Why did he have to compete with fellow students? To become famous. The champion will receive a prize and deliver a speech. Then, everyone in the cultivation colleges will know about you. Zhang Xian and the rest liked these kinds of opportunities. Showing their face might place them in an important position in the future. Everyone wanted to have the most important position and take on greater responsibilities. But thinking about it, there was no need for Lu Shu to participate in these kinds of competitions. After all, Lu Shu himself was. "I'll participate," said Lu Shu. From Zhang Xian's distress, plus 666. Zhang Xing wanted to speak, but stopped. "I thought about it. I want to be a good example to the rest of the students and push them to study harder," said Lu Shu with a strong sense of justice. Zhang Xian suddenly thought about how Jichao had told them that when Lu Shu spoke with this tone, his words cannot be trusted. What attracted Lu Shu was the fact that the champion would receive a prize and deliver a speech. He would face the 70,000 students from the 7 major cultivation colleges. Would he be promoted once again? Nie Ting organized such events to encourage competition and drive the students to work hard. In the past, the Daoyuan class was like this. Competition was very fierce. Nie Ting wanted the students to know their rivals and continue to improve. Haha. Lu Shu felt that he needed to let Nie Ting know that he had made a big mistake. Chen Zuan looked at the change in Lu Shu's expression and guessed that he was up to something. He could not understand. Why were Lu Shu and Nie Ting reliable people when it mattered, but when they ran into each other, they suddenly grew childish? Lu Xiaoyu understood Lu Shu the best. She laughed coldly. "Ha, men all don't grow up." From Lu Shu's distress, plus 187. Zhang Xian suddenly felt that he had caused a disaster. Back then, Lu Shu and Chen Zuan had been chased by them. This was definitely Heavenly King Nie's doing. All the other class aptitude geniuses were left to their own devices. But the two of them were targeted. They had observed the strange species research specializations by the sidelines and knew that Heavenly King Nie was deliberately causing trouble for them. People like Zhang Xian and Hao Jichao had become the mainstays of the organization. How could they not know why the 10th Heavenly King had appeared without a 9th Heavenly King? No. He had to leave. He might have caused a huge disaster. He could not take responsibility for this. Zhang Xian, who had been happily chatting with Lu Shu, suddenly brought the fleet of vans away without hesitation. "Hey, have something to eat before leaving," shouted Lu Shu. But Zhang Xian did not dare to look back. Chapter 757, The Story Back Then. The capital, Luhai Lane. It was summer. The walnut trees stood and provided shelter with a canopy of leaves. Shi Xuejin sat under a walnut tree with a book in his hand. He read very slowly. He flipped the page after a very long time. People would think that he was spacing out instead of reading. Can that route really be walked on? Nie Ting, who was beside him, casually asked. "There's no answer. You will only know if you walk down that path," replied Shi Xuejin calmly. "What if there is no answer?" Nie Ting looked at him. "Nothing in this world definitely has an answer." Shi Xuejin laughed. This was a lonely path. He treated this world as a massive problem. He would slowly find parameters and work out a possible answer to the problem. It might be wrong. It might be correct. But these were not important. If the sages of the past did not embark on different paths, how would we have the cultivation knowledge of today? Shi Xuejin was not paying attention. "I'm going to the Changbai Mountains next week. Keep a close lookout here," said Nie Ting. "The puppet masters are very strange. The information we have obtained from the Golden Foundation may not be complete. Or, even the Golden Foundation doesn't have the full picture." Even Shi Xuejin was uncertain. I thought that they went to India to control the practitioners there in secret. But it seems like they didn't do it. It's as if they look down on such practitioners. What is the goal of the puppet masters? Nie Ting seemed to be asking Shi Xuejin, but he also seemed to be asking himself. According to the Golden Foundation records, these powerful puppet masters lived for their king in the exiled land. They pledged their undying loyalty to the king. They had come from the exiled land and announced that they were about to welcome the return of their king. This was Nie Ting's understanding. The puppet masters were the vanguard of the king, and their king would return to earth from the exiled land. Since the king was the king of the exiled land, he should be in the exiled land. But how did the puppet masters break through the barrier? Furthermore, ever since they had come to earth, they did not seem to be in a rush to destroy the barrier. It was as if they were trying to draw their former subordinates back. There was a thick folder on the stone table in front of Nie Ting. The Golden Foundation had given the Heavenly Network the folder. The other large organizations possessed this folder as well. The folder contained the information regarding the exiled land that they had gathered. But the information was not completely accurate. Some pieces of information were pending confirmation, while other pieces of information were clues based on current information. Some of the clues included ancient myths and unofficial folk history, but these were not very reliable. Even Li Xianyi had said that this information was just for reference. Back then, some things had probably disappeared from the world. Nie Ting somehow knew why. That king was like a demon in myths that could swallow people's fears and grow stronger. Even the name of the demon had become taboo as time passed. The king had been transformed into a demon. He ruled over the exiled land. According to myths from the exiled land, even the four lords of heaven feared him. Everyone who knew the truth treated the king as an imaginary enemy. But why did the puppet masters not destroy the barrier? On a stormy night 17 years ago, they had been surrounded and attacked by the Golden Foundation. They had fought their way out. For the past 17 years, the Golden Foundation had been tracing their whereabouts, but they seemed to have vanished from the face of the earth. However, they had reappeared and mysteriously advanced in class. The Golden Foundation had been on alert for 17 years, but the puppet masters did not seem to be planning anything and vanished. Even the Golden Foundation thought that they had made a mistake. But why? Nie Ting thought calmly. He looked at the records of what had happened during that stormy night 17 years ago. They had encountered 4 puppet masters. 2 were killed, while 2 survived. Li Xianyi's foundation was also destroyed that very night. Nie Ting suddenly saw a piece of information and furrowed his eyebrows. According to the piece of information, the puppet masters seemed very weak, as if they were suffering from a serious illness. During the fight, one of the puppet masters was carrying a giant box. In the end, the puppet masters split ways and escaped. The puppet master carrying the box was chased to Luo City and killed there. The box disappeared. The puppet master was one of the 2 who had been killed. Nie Ting wanted to know what was in the box and why the puppet master was so weak. The puppet master was probably a Class A, but for some reason, he had weakened. All along, the Golden Foundation had suspected that the box contained a mythical object that could destroy the barrier. Thus, they worked very hard to find the box. Li Xianyi had also been in Luo City for 17 years. The barrier was still standing 17 years later because the puppet master had lost the mystical object that could destroy the barrier. After Cloud Yi's identity had been exposed, the Heavenly Network started to look for clues. The Heavenly Network discovered that Cloud Yi had visited Luo City 8 times in the past few years. It was as if she was looking for something. Nie Ting started to look at the records of everyone who had been there. Their oral accounts had been typed out. Suddenly, Nie Ting saw something very strange. That night, I felt as if I heard the cry of a baby in the rain. Nie Ting suddenly turned and looked at Shi Xuejin. Shi Xuejin was baffled. He touched his face. Why are you looking at me? We have always thought that the puppet master was here to break the barrier since their king is still in the exiled land. But have you ever thought that the cry of the baby was not the result of a hallucination? Could it actually have been there? The box didn't contain a mythical object to destroy the barrier. It contained a baby. Nia Ting was shocked by his own answer. Could that baby be their king? Or a descendant of the king? Shi Xuejin was dumbfounded. But no one else said that they heard the cry of a baby. Maybe that baby had been sleeping and occasionally cried, but only one person heard it, said Nia Ting. But if it really was a baby, where is the baby? Does it look like a human? Shi Xuejin laughed. According to you, this demon king should have started destroying the entire world. Nia Ting shook his head. He looked at the walnut trees above him. Sunlight streamed in through the canopy of leaves. We can only leave this question open. Wait. How old is Lu Shu? When was he sent to the orphanage? Chapter 758, The God of Luo's City. 18, and just turned 18, if I remember correctly. As for the date he was sent to the orphanage, I would need to check, said Shi Xuejin, as he took out his phone to retrieve Lu Shu's information. Yet, his expression darkened at once. Access denied. Did you set the access to yourself only? Speechlessly, Nia Ting changed the accessibility setting on his phone to allow Shi Xuejin to view Lu Shu's documents. Then, he checked against the date when Lu Shu was sent to the orphanage and heaved a sigh of relief. Not that night. The date is off by more than 3 months. Besides, the age doesn't match too. Do you think that Lu Shu is the demon king? Shi Xuejin could not stop laughing, as if he had heard the most funniest joke. The world would be in peace if the demon king is like him. Besides, does he look like a monster who feeds on fear? He's irritating indeed, but have you ever heard of an annoying demon king like him? I really admire your imagination. Nia Ting stared at Shi Xuejin expressionlessly until all traces of a smile faded from his face. Well, do you want pancakes? I can cook some for you. Then, Shi Xuejin went to the kitchen, leaving Nia Ting alone to study the files. Enhanced muscular strength. Enhanced cellular activity. Inside the Species Research Lab of Luotian Cultivation College, Chen Zuan and Cheng Qiuqiao were busy with their work. Beside them, Lu Shu was stunned by their observations. He looked at the wolf on the operating table and asked, how could there be cellular activity in a long-dead wolf? Chen Zuan put down his scalpel and took off his lab coat and mask. Then, he replied helplessly, tell me, Brother Shu, are we still getting any professional teachers or not? The observations earlier were purely bullshit. Chen Zuan did not even know what muscular strength and cellular activity meant. Now, the species research major was not equipped with any teacher, despite the professional-level laboratory. As for Lu Shu, there was no way for him to understand a field he had never learned before, no matter how smart he was. It was true that he had brought back samples of mutated species, but how were they to study them? Where was their teacher? He had been brought away by Nia Ting. Distress crossed over Lu Shu's face. This is truly a major, cursed by Nia Ting. Chen Zuan grinned. Anyway, we can be called semi-scientists already. Being a scientist used to be my childhood dream. I once came across an article that said that usually each lab would be allocated one lousy student to motivate other researchers and students. His constant failure would also encourage other people to continue trying. How funny. But our lab consists purely of talented people. This is how powerful our species research department is. Once he was done speaking, he saw Chao Qingxi, Lu Xiaoyu, Lu Shu and Cheng Qiuqiao staring at him in silence. From Chen Zuan's distress, plus 555. Lu Shu agreed that not having a teacher was a serious problem because they could not possibly research aimlessly in the lab all day, with all the samples ready. I'll talk to Zhong Yutong. You can all stay here, said Lu Shu. Then, he exited the room and walked towards Zheng Yutong's office. As he was walking, he saw a giant figure with sunglasses and a cap rushing down the office building. Lu Shu shouted after brief hesitation, Li Yixiao. Li Yixiao. Without any intention to stop, the man hurried on. From Li Yixiao's distress, +99. Lu Shu felt suspicious. Did that fellow do something bad? Why was he ghosting him? He ran towards Li Yixiao at once. Then, he drew a cold breath upon seeing Li Yixiao's face. Who beat you like this? Sadness crossed Li Yixiao's face. It's Nailin K. I think her mom was right. We are not fated together. Lu Shu was stunned. What? Why? What happened? I don't know where she saw the article that said men would be better off when their wife was not around. So she asked me what I would do if I couldn't see her one day, replied Li Yixiao. So how did you answer? Lu Shu had a bad hunch. I replied that my life would be pretty good. Then, she disappeared for 2 days, and I could finally see her through my swollen eyelids on the 7th day. Lu Shu was shocked. How did you two stay together for so long? It was a mistake that has led to even more mistakes, Li Yixiao said, looking regretful. No, I mean, it's impressive that Nailin K has yet to kill you until today, Lu Shu sighed. From Li Yixiao's distress, +666. Lu Shu, do you have any plans to go overseas recently? Li Yixiao suddenly asked, please remember to bring me if you do. I have to stay away from that woman. You can go overseas yourself, Lu Shu said, confused, why do you have to drag me along? Nailin K would probably blame him if he dragged Li Yixiao overseas. Lu Shu decided not to do such things. Li Yixiao looked as if he was about to cry. I only have $20 in my pocket each day. Where can I go? Huh? Where can I go? It's all your fault. Don't act as if you don't know. From Li Yixiao's distress, +788. Lu Shu turned and walked away at once. I almost forgot that I was looking for Zheng Yutong. Now that he thought about it, it was really too much to reduce his daily pocket money from 50 to 20. If Lu Shu were to do it again, he would definitely laugh out loud. Hey, I almost forgot about the serious matter, Li Yixiao shouted, be careful. Lu Shu stopped short. He thought the puppet masters had found him and were coming to kill him. But Li Yixiao continued, mutated plants have been spotted in a foreign city. They feed on all creatures unconsciously and have destroyed the entire city. You must be careful about such incidents. Lu Shu understood at once the rationale behind increased trimming of plants in Luo City. It was because another city had been compromised. Then, a thought struck him. He was a self-proclaimed god of Luo City when he acquired the Seal of Lands, and he could manipulate the concentration of spirit qi locally to avoid the appearance of mutated animals and plants in the city. With that thought, he decided to return home at once. Sitting on the sofa, he retrieved the Seal of Lands from his body. Then, with a simple scan via his magical instincts, he instantly climbed up the sky ladder of the Seal of Lands and had a perfect bird's-eye view of the whole city. Chapter 759, Lu Shu moved the mountains. Lu Shu looked down at Luo City. Spirit qi was floating over the ground like a mist, and the entirety of it was under his control. The sight suddenly caused Lu Shu to be lost in his thoughts. When he had just obtained the Seal of Lands, he thought there could exist a Seal of Lands for each city in the many remains. Afterwards, however, he realized it was not the case. There was only one Seal of Lands in the world so far. Lu Shu's deduction was reasonable, though, as there was a small print Luo City on the right side of the Seal of Lands. But then, as Lu Shu wondered, could it be that the print was simply an indication of the control range of the seal, instead of its true name, since there was not a second Seal of Lands in this world? As a matter of fact, Lu Shu's actual control range was much larger than the current size of Luo City. In fact, it was almost 3 times as big. Hence, Lu Shu used to attribute the disparity to the difference in size between Luo City in ancient times and that in the modern era. But now, Lu Shu had a bolder idea. His magical instincts hovered over Luo City. With a wave of his hand, he tried to push the boundaries of the Seal of Lands outwards. Instantly, he felt a strong flow of his celestial powers towards the Seal of Lands, as though infusing it with energy. In the next instant, the Seal of Lands lit up. To Lu Shu's surprise, he sensed his magical instincts strengthening, and the detectable range had been expanded significantly. In the past, his magical instincts could only perceive grayness outside the control range of the seal. But now that the border had been pushed back, more gray lands had been rendered their real-life colors. Similarly, Lu Shu could now see rising mists of spirit qi over those new lands. Lu Shu drew a startled breath. He once joked that he could only be the god of one city since his control over spirit qi was limited by the size of the city. Back then, the Seal of Lands did not seem that powerful after all. But now it appeared that he had underestimated its power. He could actually alter the boundary of his control range. The Seal of Lands had truly lived up to its name. In his heart, Lu Shu quietly apologized to the Seal of Lands that he had misunderstood its powers for so long. In the next instant, all of Lu Shu's celestial powers gushed into the Seal of Lands. With a raise of his hand, the border of the seal was immediately pushed out by 5 to 6 kilometers. This area might seem negligible when compared to the land area of the entire country, but it was a huge jump from its previous control range. With another push, the border extended for another 10 kilometers before Lu Shu's force had been exhausted. Currently, it would take 8 hours for Lu Shu to restore his celestial powers completely. In other words, he could increase the radius of the control range of his Seal of Lands by more than 10 kilometers every 8 hours. Moreover, he was still at the first star in the 4th nebula. The rate of expansion would be incredible when he ignited all 7 nebulae. By then, the entire world of spirit qi would be under his control. At that moment, an idea slipped past Lu Shu's mind. While other people profited from the trade of magical stones, he could actually start a spirit qi business. How about that? He would cut the supply of spirit qi when people failed to offer him a satisfactory deal. Nobody could do anything about him. Within seconds, Lu Shu had already been immersed in his own wonderful fantasy. After 1 whole hour, Lu Shu finally recovered from his ecstasy. Some of his celestial powers had been replenished in the rotation of his celestial map. Thus, he decided to do a trial run first. In the next instant, all of the secret practitioners in Luo City Black Market, while practicing cultivation, suddenly realized that all the spirit qi was gone. It was gone. Simple as that. Before they could react, the spirit qi was back again. All of them were residents right beside the black market. They walked out of their houses and looked at each other in confusion. What just happened? Was it only me, or did the spirit qi run away itself? In fact, there were thousands of secret practitioners in Luo City at the moment. Sometimes the total number could even hit 7,000. Given the huge population, there were at least 1 or 2 of the sensory type. Thus, after some discussion, they could finally confirm that a moment ago the spirit qi had really grown legs and was wandering around for a while. From Li Sun's distress, +48. From. All of a sudden, endless distress points streamed into Lu Shu's record thanks to the 4,000 secret practitioners beside Luo City Black Market. The points ranged from 1 to a few hundred. Within a few moments, Lu Shu had earned more than 200,000 points. This was truly the most efficient way of gaining distress points. Now that it required millions of distress points to ignite every new star, Lu Shu was having a real headache. The first star of the 4th nebula needed 1 million, same for the second, and the third required 2 million, so on and so forth. Following the same vein, the seventh star cost 32 million points. What a difficult task. Meanwhile, he still had to redeem chi fruits to rebuild his snow mountain for the third time in exchange for the third sword spirit. Honestly speaking, he was rather curious about how the third spirit would be like. In fact, he did not have any high expectations for the abilities of his sword spirits due to all the unreliable pets and holy artifacts he had. Instead, he was more interested in their queer behavioral traits. When Lu Shu was about to do it again, he realized he did not have enough celestial powers left. It turned out that the manipulation of spirit chi required his own strength as well. But it was not a big deal because Lu Shu's energy replenishment was rather fast. At this moment, Lu Shu's phone rang. Using magical instincts, his consciousness returned to his body and retrieved his phone. It was Nia Ting. After a short pause, he picked up the call. It's not me. From Nia Ting's distress, plus 188. Nia Ting asked coldly, did I mention anything yet? Both Nia Ting and Shi Xuejin were aware of Lu Shu's possession of the Seal of Lands. Hence, there could be no other explanation about the large-scale abnormality in the spirit chi concentration beside the black market. Once Yu Mingyu filed the report, Nia Ting made the call immediately. Not me, Lu Shu emphasized with a hearty laugh, really. Don't abuse the usage of the Seal of Lands again, said Nia Ting. You should figure out how to resolve the potential threats of mutated creatures since you've mastered the Seal of Lands. Such pranks can do no good to you. Don't do it again. Lu Shu rolled his eyes. Who said it did not bring any good to him? Nonetheless, Nia Ting had a point. It was not very nice of him to disturb other people's cultivation. After all, those secret practitioners did not inconvenience him in any way. But Lu Shu had made up his mind and was determined to push the boundary of the Seal of Lands to overseas as soon as possible. Although it was not an easy feat, Lu Shu was not deterred by the challenge at all. He had to learn from Yu Gongwen, as the abundance of distress points earned would prove his effort worthwhile. Chapter 760, Vengeful Lu Shu. The location of Luo City was about N34 degree 37 9.01 foot, E112 degree 2650.37. Lu Shu calculated the most desirable direction in which the Seal of Lands should expand. Then he realized, to his dismay, that the city was located right in the center of the country and it was far from any national border. So how? It would take ages to expand it overseas. Despite Nia Ting's warning, Lu Shu believed that his ultimate intention was benign. Indeed, he was looking for the root cause of the mutation, and this required multiple trials and errors. It was impossible to forbid him any mistakes in the process. It's okay. Not a big deal. Then, he continued to ponder about any possible way to accelerate the expansion. Once again he climbed up the sky ladder of the Seal of Lands in an attempt to control the expansion accurately provided the good view, and it turned out to be viable too. The original boundary of the Seal of Lands was irregular. It had a 10-meter wide tentacle reaching into the north, which looked rather creepy. On the downside, the accurate control of expansion required tremendous amount of celestial powers. By nightfall, Lu Shu's celestial powers had been sufficiently restored. Then, he pushed the border by another 50 kilometers while maintaining enough spirit chi for himself. Honestly speaking, the effect was not quite up to his expectation. It would definitely be more efficient if he could expand the area pieces by pieces like earlier. But Lu Shu did not care. At the moment, Lu Shu was drenched in sweat. It was much more tiring than the day before. Lu Shu realized that he had used a couple of hours to accomplish what was done very fast previously. On the other hand, Chen Zuan and the rest noticed that Lu Shu would go home after a short visit to the lab each day. No one knew what he was doing. "Brother Shu, did you manage to get us a teacher?" Chen Zuan blocked Lu Shu as he was about to go home. "Don't worry," said Lu Shu causally, "it's not urgent. I have something more important to do." With that, Lu Shu left again. Chen Zuan and Cheng Qiuqiao exchanged a look of concern. What happened to Brother Shu? Why does he look so excited? Is he sick? Then, Cheng Qiuqiao asked Lu Xiaoyu, what's wrong with him? But Lu Xiaoyu ignored him completely. Same as the rest, Lu Xiaoyu was also concerned about Lu Shu's unusual behavior recently. In the past few days, he had not been singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star at all. Could it be that he has run into some trouble? And he doesn't want us to be worried? Cheng Qiuqiao asked, adding an imagined, touching trait to Lu Shu's personality. Chen Zuan let out a cold laugh. Do you really think he's that kind of person? Why don't we follow him and take a look? It's pretty scary if he goes on like this. We have to at least figure out what he's busy with, said Cheng Qiuqiao. By then, Lu Shu had remained in that state for almost 2 weeks. It was abnormal. Back at home, Lu Shu took out his seal of lands. He was already reaching his destination. In fact, there was nothing much he could do in a 10-meter wide stretch of land, as each city was much larger than that. But Lu Shu had his own plan. He gazed at the borders with full anticipation. There was only 50 kilometers left. In his magical instincts, the vast land was gray, except for a colorful thread extending all the way to the north. The thread went past mountains and rivers. Lu Shu noticed a benefit of his expansion strategy, that it allowed his magical instincts to survey the surface conditions within the boundaries. In other words, he could be transported to anywhere within the borders with the seal of lands in his hands. It felt like he was exploring new territories in a game, and that he was clearing the mists in the atlas. Suddenly, intense exhilaration burned in Lu Shu's eyes. The border had finally reached the Luhai Lane, all the way into Nieting and Shuejin's courtyard. No sooner when Chen Zuan and the rest reached Lu Shu's doorstep than they heard his frenzied laughter from his room. It's karma. That made Chen Zuan's and Cheng Qiuqiao's flesh creep. What the hell? What's happening to Brother Shu? Like I said, he's sick. What should we do? To Chen Zuan, Lu Shu was a powerful figure to cozy up to. Now that Lu Shu was his classmate, it was a perfect opportunity for him to do so. But why had he gone crazy at this moment? In Lu Shu's opinion, the 10-meter wide control range was not that useful. An effective search range required at least a few tens of kilometers. What could he find in merely 10 meters? But it would be a different case if he had an end in mind. Now it was time. Lu Shu extended the border right into the courtyard. From there he planned to create a circle with the courtyard as its center. But then he realized that the expansion was more laborious than pushing outward the borders due to the distance. It was fine, though, as he only needed 500 square meters. With his magical instincts in the sky, drops of sweat slid down Lu Shu's physical face. Suddenly, he clenched his teeth and let out a loud roar. In the next instant, the entire Luhai Lane was covered in his control range. Lu Shu laughed wildly at Shuejin and Nieting, who was about to read the files handed over by Hao Jichao beside him. As Nieting flipped through the documents, he suddenly gazed into the sky, knitting his brows together. Currently, Nieting was only one step away from the breakthrough of Class A, thus, he had sensed something unusual when Lu Shu looked at him from the sky. But he saw nothing. Then, Hao Jichao exclaimed in surprise, the spirit chi is all gone. From Nieting's distress, plus 666. Lu Shu had spent 2 weeks just for this moment. At that instant, he felt so relieved. He would have a guilty conscience tricking other people, but not Nieting. As the saying went, you would feel more aggrieved if you were wronged and swallowed the unfairness yourself. And he, Lu Shu, was a vengeful person. At this moment, Nieting yelled coldly at the invisible existence in the sky, Lu Shu. Then came the slash. Lu Shu shuddered in shock as Nieting called his name. Then, his consciousness returned to his physical form at once. In the next instant, he heard the frenzied knocking on his door. From Nia Ting's distress, plus 999.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty, man, we just putting on a show. Try to look to the heavens,